local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. This is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler, and as always, we appreciate you joining us. We live stream here every weekday, starting at 1 p.m., going throughout the afternoon. We're also at 11 a.m. in between our other newscasts. So this is a great place to go for not only our regular content that we have, but also for any breaking news between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. I will be here for you for that. Right now, we are talking about the Bureau of Land Management and some prescribed burns that are going to be happening this weekend, but also just in general, we wanted to learn more about why, how these things happen, what the mission is, what they accomplish, all of that. So this is an intentional burning of a certain amount of land or acreage in order to, well, let's find out about that. That's what we're doing right now. We're joined right now by Mike Solheim, who is a fire management specialist with the Bureau of Land Management. And Mike, thank you very much for joining us here today. I really appreciate it. I've been aware of prescribed burns, of course, as a lot of people have for a long time, but I was thinking, I don't really know exactly how and why these occur. So if you don't mind, could you please start us off by just saying, letting us know what a prescribed burn is?
Yeah, absolutely. And good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, so a prescribed burn, it's a planned event. It's a planned ignition. One of the primary reasons why we do prescribed fire is to reduce fuel loadings on the landscape. And by doing that, that also reduces the intensity and the severity in the event that there is an unplanned or a wildfire that occurs. And it allows firefighters on the ground to safely come in and be able to manage that fire and in the hopes of being successful and eventually putting the fire out. So there's a benefit to the landscape, but there's also a benefit to the firefighters on the ground.
And how do you decide what areas you're going to burn as far as knowing, the acreage, the places, the locations, all of that?
Yeah, so we have a lot of different tools at our disposal to identify those areas. It could be through GIS or, maps of areas that have very high fuel loadings next to, homes, communities, what also we call the wildland urban interface. So we really want to focus on those areas that have a lot of heavy fuels on the ground, a lot of growth that cannot be, that could, create that high severity. So we focus on those areas. That's our primary areas that we focus on is the wildland urban interface. And so we begin with that, but then there's times that we focus on other areas that could be a benefit to, let's say, wildlife. So, but our primary mission when it comes to prescribed fire is the protection of our communities, homes, and our infrastructures across BLM lands.
And so when you talk about that buildup of fuel, I'd like to discuss that just a little bit more. So what constitutes a good buildup of fuel that would maybe necessitate or be a good candidate for one of these burns?
Yeah, so, over the last 115 years, we do a really good job of putting fires out, but a result of that is those fuels build up over time. Vegetation dies, trees die, and that fuel ends up on the ground and it accumulates. And so when you do have a fire, it burns at a very high intensity and at times a very high severity, which has a direct negative impact to the ground and potentially the surrounding communities. So, prescribed burning, that reduces that fuel loading and it reduces that intensity and severity. So that's the areas we look at is those high fuel loading areas, which is a direct result of basically not maintaining the landscape.
When you go in for a prescribed burn, how do you go about starting that and then keeping it contained and keeping it safe and not accidentally spreading somewhere else?
Absolutely. So I always look at prescribed fire like baking a cake. So, you have a recipe. It takes a recipe of favorable weather conditions. We don't want it too dry. We don't want it too wet. We look at the fuel moistures again. We don't want it too dry. We don't want it too wet. And the resources that we need to safely keep that fire contained to those inside those control features. So it just takes a lot of coordination, a lot of communication, a lot of planning. So we can find a good area that we can safely implement the prescribed fire and keep it within those control features on the ground, like roads or trails, etc. So But yeah, a lot of planning goes involved. It could take a year to plan, and it could take a day to 2 days to implement that burn. So a lot of planning goes into implementing a prescribed burn.
Is there a lot of training value for firefighters in doing these controlled burns? Just since you mentioned it does take
Absolutely.
so much planning.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We always say we're always going to be students of fire because we're always learning something when we apply fire on the landscape. And we have the ability to watch fire and see how it burns and see how the weather impacts that fire behavior or the fuels impact that fire behavior. And it's a great opportunity for those firefighters to observe and be able to learn how fire reacts to its what we call fire environment.
So probably pretty valuable and beneficial information gathering, even just for future actual wildland fires.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how many of these do you do a year?
It really depends, one, it's always, budget is always, an issue, but, on average across Oregon, Washington for the BLM, we could look at up to a dozen prescribed burns. We have 9 districts, Washington and Oregon. And so, each district usually plans in the fall, anywhere from 2 to 3, burns. But it's not just, broadcast or underburning. There's also, we do pile burning from post-harvest activities or thinning. We need to go in and remove those fuels, and we do it by burning piles. But a lot of our burning is through broadcast and underburning.
So if we're talking about these, I guess let's talk about some of these fires that are going to be happening here this weekend. So for people, for people who are in, oops, sorry, that was my fault. I hit the wrong button there. So for people who are in the Mid-Valley there near Corvallis, Eugene, Albany, what can they expect this weekend with these prescribed burns?
We could definitely, the direct result is, the smoke. There's going to be smoke. We usually plan where, how much smoke it's going to produce, where that smoke's going to go based on the winds, the predicted winds. There's a lot of tools out there that the public can use. We like to do a lot of press releases through social media, through the radio, through the news, of course. But there's ODF provides a smoke forecast, so folks can get in there and look to see where these burns are at and the potential where that smoke may end up. But we usually plan to keep that smoke in areas that's not going to have a impact to the community.
And that's part of following along with all those different weather patterns, I would imagine, and determining where the
Exactly.
wind's going to blow that
Yep.
smoke.
Yep.
Do you know where the smoke is generally going to be blowing once you do start these burns?
Yeah, we have a lot of models that can give us a prediction of, based on how much smoke we do put in the atmosphere, where that smoke's going to travel to, when, nighttime comes and that smoke settles to the ground, where it's going to end up. So that's part of that planning process and running through those models to give us an idea so we can plan for that. And it's really, where that wind wants to go, and in the valleys where it's going to settle. So again, we try to plan for those and look for areas that, hey, it's better to put the smoke over here, so let's wait for that wind direction to do that.
And how many of them are actually, well, speaking of the conditions, are the conditions going to be right for you to do these this weekend?
In some areas, it does look favorable. Looks like we might have some rain coming in on Monday. So yeah, we always play by the weather. And so it looks, speaking to some of these districts, there's a few east side districts over on the east side of Oregon that are looking to burn on Sunday and in the hopes to burn up against a weather system that's coming in on Monday. So
do you have any more planned for like Northwest Oregon specifically, like say from Portland on down to Salem, that area, or even to the coast?
Yeah, Northwest District BLM is actually burning today. They're doing a couple of small 3-acre meadow burns, so grass. It's more of a restoration project, but again, the objective is to reduce that dead grass and to promote new grass growth for the elk habitat in that area. But yes, Northwest District is burning as we speak.
Interesting. Yeah, so it really is working with a lot of, I would imagine, other organizations, since you're talking about the elk
Yes.
population, ODFW maybe, or whoever else. I don't even know what department that would be, but probably a lot of cross collaboration, I would imagine.
Yeah, it takes everybody. So we have great interagency relationships. with ODF, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, Forest Service. We bring everybody together because it just builds the resources that we need to safely implement these prescribed burns.
If resources weren't an issue, how many of these would you do per year?
Oh boy. Yeah, if I had a Christmas list, I'd do as many
Yeah.
as I can, but it really depends on resources and how much money is available to implement these burns. But you know, it just depends on a lot of factors. But most of the time, we have the resources that we need. There's a lot of, bigger the prescribed burn, the more resources it's going to take. So again, it goes, hand in hand with that planning. So we know how big this is, and we have a really good idea how many resources it takes to successfully pull it off.
Well, I really appreciate learning more about this. And just to reiterate, I know we talked about this at the beginning, but to reiterate too, I'm just going to ask one more time. So ultimately, doing these prescribed burns has a lot of benefits. Could you maybe list out just what some of those benefits are for the land and for the people and animals that live near them?
Yeah, so again, it's reducing the fuel loading. It reduces by doing that, if there is a wildfire, it reduces the intensity and the severity. It also helps, it benefits the wildfire firefighters coming in to safely, provide an anchor and to get around that fire safely because of that reduced severity and intensity. And then by reducing the fuel, it also promotes forage for the wildlife, promotes new growth for trees and shrubs, and just it's an overall benefit to everything on the landscape. So.
Well, I want to say thank you, so much for joining us here too to talk about this. I really appreciate your time and walking through everything and getting us this information. And for people out there who want to know more too, and particularly maybe to figure out if there is going to be a prescribed burn maybe in their area, or if there is one, what to know, what's the best way for them to get information on that?
Yeah, the Bureau of Land Management has a Facebook page. We usually post our upcoming burns. So that's a great place to start. ODF has information on upcoming prescribed burns, Forest Service. So all those agencies that have a prescribed fire program usually post through social media, local press releases to provide that information to the folks in the communities.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us here just to talk about this and go through it. I really appreciate your time. This is awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And for everybody watching too, this is Fox 12 Now. We are live streaming here out of the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. As I mentioned, we do this every weekday starting at 1. We get to have these longer form conversations to get some more information out there. If you have questions or if you have comments or if you have a segment you would like to see on here, feel free to send me an email, fox12now@kptv.com, and we can see if maybe we can make that work for you. We've got plenty more coming up here throughout the afternoon. We're going to be talking to Portland Weird United about an event coming up this weekend. We're going to be talking about all kinds of different things. We're going to talk about some charitable organizations as well. So plenty of things here. But if there's breaking news between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m., this is also the place to go. So thanks for downloading that Fox 12 Oregon app. If you haven't done that, good time to do it. But I will talk to you soon here in about 15 minutes or so. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.